Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye. Positive, gentlemen.
That's right. And to prevent us from being too overtly negative or cynical or pompous or egotistical, well, I'm not going to say anything about it. The reviews of this movie are not particularly great, but we're going to try to keep it positive. So we have this here buzzer to play.
There you go.
You're going to hear that sound anytime we say something negative, and that means we have to take a drink, people, and we hope you drink along with us.
So pour yourselves a glass as we get ready to talk about the movie that managed to piss off America this week.
That's right. Yes, the movie. Let's take our pre-show shot. And cheers, gentlemen.
And yes, that was my Gryffindor shot cup.
Nice. Well, I got a beer and I don't have my bottle opener, so I'll figure that out in a second. People, we are talking about Blonde today, the movie in which everyone is your daddy except for your daddy.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I don't know. I saw Dave reaching for the buzzer, but I didn't hear it.
I got shivers. No, I was turning my volume down so that.
Oh, I thought you were buzzing me. Okay, great. I got away with it.
This hand's the buzzer hand. See.
That's right. Blonde, not received particularly well. IMDb score 5.6. Rotten Tomatoes like 40 something. Audience scores like 30 or something. Dave, we just talked about the premise of our show.
Yeah, Dave, coming at you, dude. Coming at you.
Written and directed by Andrew Dominik. Certainly getting a lot of attention for being a man and taking this on and doing it the way he's doing it. He's from New Zealand, Dave. Kind of on your side.
He is. He was also the director of Chopper, which was one of Eric Bana's best films.
Yeah, 2000.
Give
and then,
Chopper
of course,
it'll scare the shit out of you.
I don't know where he met Brad Pitt, but Killing Them Softly and the assassination of the coward Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. There's one of them is a coward.
Try and fit that title on an application sheet.
Brad Pitt and Plan B produced this here film Blonde, which just premiered on Netflix. $25 million budget. Ana de Armas taking on the role of Norma Jeane. A lot of other people are taking on characters with fake names so that they wouldn't get sued the fuck out of them by their portrayal in this film, including Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller, who are the former baseball player and the playwright is how they're billed or some shit like that. And we'll get into that in a second. People had the NC-17 rating and the controversies and the accent and the trailer. I'm sure we'll talk about it all if you've been paying attention. But we have some sponsors that we have to shout out. John, you want to shout out our sponsor and a half?
Sure. We have, I guess half a beer sponsor. Carlos, we love you. We miss you, Mr. Carlos Barroso. You can find him on Instagram. I really miss
Carlos's beers.
Go find that guy on Instagram. Follow him, cbarrozo.beer, CBARROZO.beer. And we got a musical artist in residence. His name is Dasein, Dasein. Congrats, Jeff. Go down the rabbit hole, the Dasein rabbit hole on every single music platform. That music is available for free, ready to download. Support. All right. Let's fucking do it, dude.
All right, we have gripes of the week. I feel like that was such a good segue into our episode about Blonde. Should we skip gripes of the week this week? Dave, do you have a gripe?
No, I don't.
All right, I'm gonna give the quickest gripe. All right,
here comes the gripe timer.
The quickest gripe ever.
Sure, 8 minutes later.
Sure.
Go.
Yeah.
Is it on? Streaming platforms that let you watch commercials, go fuck yourselves. All of you guys. Here's the thing. When I do trainings, for instance, I need to make sure I watch the full videos, and then afterwards it says, yes, you have watched this video, you can proceed. So why is it that if I want to rewind, like let's say, for instance, I watch an episode of a TV show and I was like, wait, is that the character from the beginning? I have to watch the commercials all over again. Why can't I just get a little check that says you watch the commercials? He can go back and just check. What the fuck is up with this? If I go back, and then if I want to jump back to the end, I have to watch another block of commercials. Get over yourselves. Come on, I'm paying. It's not like I'm doing this for free, Hulu. The extra $4 to get rid of I really feel like they're messing with me, and I hate you. I feel like
I'm going to add on to that. I feel like there was a moment in time, or it still happens sometimes, where all the commercials are front loaded. That's fine. Like just throw them in the front so that I can just walk away for 5 minutes, 6 minutes while these play, and then don't interrupt the actual watching experience. The ads are still playing. Yeah, I totally agree, dude. That shit is so fucking annoying. When you rewind and you hit a commercial, oh my God, and there's no way around it.
All right. Thank you very much. Let us segue into our conversation about Blonde, right? Which is the telling of the character Norma Jeane becoming Marilyn Monroe. It kind of covers a very big block of her life. This is based on the Joyce Carol Oates novel. They're calling it a novel. So even though it's pulling on a lot of the nonfiction elements, she's sort of been on the trail. I don't know if they are, with lawsuits and things, like, the one team has their experts, and then the other team has their experts. So I don't know if she's on like team Andrew Dominik or all the media places, or like, you speak out because this is controversial. So I don't know what,
drugs, to be honest.
I don't know what, Dave. I don't know what side she's coming in on this from, but she is speaking.
And I'll speak to it. I have an interview of her that I'll reference once we start talking.
Well, I have two, and they have two very different provocative headlines. One is like, the writer of Blondes, the book, or something was like, here's where the movie Blonde got it wrong from the author of Blonde. And then the next one is like, Blonde, author of the book, calls film brilliant. It says it's sincere adaptation, whatever. So it's like the headlines are kind of, again, this is one of those weird things where the media firestorm. It's almost like you can't watch this movie without it. So I'm going to pull back from that, of course, right now. I'll just give you the pitch. Let me just a little bit more about the cast. Julianne Nicholson plays Gladys, who's Norma Jeane's mom. You have other stars would be fucking Adrien Brody, who's having a good time right now. He plays Arthur Miller. And I will say, if anybody knows what Arthur Miller looks like, Adrien Brody looks a lot like Arthur Miller in this movie. I saw him, and I watched Winning Time, and he was Pat Riley. So he's played a lot of known people, not to young people on TikTok, of course. And then Bobby Cannavale plays ex-athlete, aka Joe DiMaggio. That's it. Let's go into the description.
Yeah, bat for a cock.
Of course, people, if you're new to the podcast, we try to start spoiler free. Should have said that a little earlier here. So we're going to try to start. I don't really know how you spoil this movie necessarily, but we're going to try and hopefully not.
I don't think you can spoil it.
That ship has sailed.
I think we know what happens to Marilyn Monroe in this. Okay. This is, Are you ready? A fictionalized chronicle of the inner life of Marilyn Monroe. Who would like to start first with your initial takeaways? What'd you think? What'd you feel?
I love that I'm not gonna go first, but I just want to say I love that the director in his interviews doubled down on this stuff, and he's like, I made the movie and told the story I want to tell. Fuck you if you don't get it, basically. But Netflix hedged their bets and was like, a fantasy telling.
Yeah, he did not help himself.
Yeah,
I saw this. I will say a lady who called this film offensive, a reviewer who called this film offensive, pulled out a couple quotes, and I will say she pulled out some very effective quotes in putting him down. And one of them was basically like, I had a lot of girlfriends who, did these things, and it was like, not the most pro-femme take from the director of this film that is rated NC-17. Okay. John, I guess Dave's kind of goading you into going first here. So,
all right, I guess I'll go first. I don't think the language to discuss this film is I like it or I didn't like it. This is a work of art.
You should really talk to a lot of people who have been talking about this film.
Sure. No. I think we can't. What's fun about the point I'm making is going to prove itself in all of our references to all the controversy over this movie, because this is the kind of thing where the intention of very artful, and this is clearly an artful, experiential kind of film. It's not a story. It's not linear necessarily. It's when you make something like this and when you watch something like this, you really shouldn't try to go and asking yourself, am I liking it or not? It's really, is it effective or not? And how it's affecting you, whether that's a positive or negative reaction, I still think that might equal success. It's kind of, I think it's kind of proof that this film is working, whether or not you agree with his intention. This film is working because most people are not feeling mediocre about this. They are either hating this or they are finding it really compelling and, whatever words they want to use to describe something that's very positive. So I am on the team of, I found this, I don't even know if I want to use the word positive, because I didn't love how this movie made me feel, but I loved watching it because I thought it was so incredibly risky and effective. I am also going to put on that cap and say that I am very aware that I am a man. I am not a woman. I am not a woman living in this time. And I went to see this with a woman, my female partner, and she had a really tough time with this movie. We have been talking about it a lot since then. I've talked about this movie a lot with some people from film school who have seen it. men and women. And it does seem to be viewing very differently depending on who you are and how you identify. And there's so many things that we bring into our art experiences nowadays. And this is so intentionally artistic and poetic and suggestive and not literal that it is getting under people's skin. But I will just say, as a fan of movies, I haven't seen anything like this in a long time. And I had a really effective experience. I might watch it again just to try to put myself through it over the next week or so. I will say this. I saw it in the theater, and it makes me nervous that people are going to try to watch this at home, where they can pause it and debate it and scream about it and get upset about it and not just deal with it and then try to kind of look back and see what the experience was. So I will, if we are forcing me to say negative or positive, I will be team positive for this movie, but not necessarily just because I love the story. It's not like that. How about you, Dave? How much did you not feel that way?
Let me put it this way. I you know how in Marvel films every now and then they'll do like a silhouette shot or some sort of shot, and you're like, that's a comic book frame. Like that's a frame from the comic book. That's for the fans.
Like the way it's
This is 3 hours of that, where like every 8 minutes they go to a photo, or like a photo that was taken. They set up the photo, or they set up the film, they set up the impersonation, and then they act out a scene around it. And it just does it again and again and again. And it could have been like an hour shorter for me. I was bored.
It was long.
I was bored.
Definitely not the first person to say that. Yeah. How about you, Jeff?
Before, wait. Before
I'm surprised there's not more. Yeah,
don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I loved Anna's performance.
Yeah.
She's goddamn.
I thought that was fucking phenomenal. Like it was, she literally embodied it. But for me, it came across as the whole movie was, look at her playing this character. It was kind of like the gimmick happened again and again.
Marilyn playing this character.
It was kind of, look how well she can do this impersonation. They just kind of it just kind of did that over and over again. There were some great bits, like the opening was fucking brutal. Like
it was a horror film for me.
Showing,
I don't know about
showing her
like
mother's like schizophrenia. Like that was fucking brutal.
With the fire in the background, it was beautiful. It's terrible, but beautiful.
Yeah, the aspect ratio changing I liked. So like the style of the film I liked. But yeah, I'll touch more on why this didn't sit well with me. And it's not, I don't think it's anything to do with what anyone said, because I didn't read any of that until afterwards. I went in this cold. I did watch it at home, and I didn't stop it. Let's recommend that.
Nobody read anything about this. Just watch it if you're interested at all. Don't try to carry anything into this. Oh, sorry. Jeff, go for it.
I saw this at home. I think I told you guys, I saw the first half hour of this, which is basically little young Norma, and I had to stop for reasons not to be discussed in the podcast. But then, because we had this tonight and I had a busy day, I had to watch this last night. So I basically sat down and it was like 2 hours and 15 minutes left in this movie, and I had to watch it last night. So I couldn't stop it, pause it. I couldn't put it off. And there's some stuff in here that is disturbing. Anyway, I woke up today and I was thinking a lot about how I would answer this question. What is your initial takeaway? And honestly, I validate every single thing that John said about like how to discuss and validating the problems and complaints that everybody has. This movie blew me away. This movie blew me away. And because
yes.
No, here's why. Let me explain my experience, because you're right. It was long. I did check the time a couple times to see how much was left. It is exploitative. They do show things that a lot of people would probably have very good reasons to say they don't need to show us these kinds of things. Which let's go ahead and I'm going to save that for later and talk about them. And because it's almost impossible as guys to talk about this and justify our feelings and opinions about, we just have to accept that this is not our not conversation, because we could talk about anything, but like it's not a fight that I want to pick. It's not I don't want to choose a side on that.
Why don't we just go ahead and ask listeners that we're aware of that, and we're just going to try our best to converse, but we know that you're going to take it how you're going to take it, and we're aware who we are discussing this film. And that's just.
So here's what I saw, and I think Dave, you're on to. I think what you were saying is true. For early in the film, and I realized that I was captivated. I realized very early on, I was like, holy shit, I'm like really into this movie. Part of me thought, I was like, it really reminded me of being in an acting class, which is an experience that not a lot of people have. But when you're in an acting class, especially when you're in the 5-hour acting classes that I know John and I have taken, which this is how it is in New York. When you have scenes, if you're in a good acting class, you need time. You can't just shit it up there for 10 minutes and then get some notes and leave. You're never going to get better. You have to stick it out there for an hour and you have to fucking live with it. And then what happens on top of that is that these blank walls, you go into it in a trance as an audience member, especially when a scene's good, and you start filling in the blanks of what's happening on the set. So a lot of the visual style that was being put in kind of reminded me of when somebody was doing a good scene, and I started getting that sort of white light experience as an audience member of like everything else just sort of basically reality. There's nothing about this film that is in reality. So I like that this Netflix thing was like, it's about the inner life. That's all it's about. It is not. So yes, you're right, Dave. They hit these tent poles, but let me talk about what that was for me. So I'm in this acting class and I was like, it's kind of like somebody who both can't get into a role, which we've seen in acting classes, people that just can't get into it, but also at the same time, somebody who can't get out of a role. That was like the next step of my progress. Now, whether that's Anna becoming Norma or Norma becoming Marilyn, honestly, it all becomes sort of the same thing in this movie. So even like the accent stuff, like I did not think about that for 1 second. Whereas the trailer, I thought about it, but in this, there were times where she sounded not American or English or whatever. And I didn't think about that for 1 second. So then eventually I devolved into really this whole thing lived somewhere between a dream and a nightmare. And she was never Norma or Marilyn to me in this movie. She was always in between. And she was always trying to latch on to one. And the tentpole things like the white dress going up and like the Kennedy thing, you know, all of these things, the Kennedy thing was very exploitative. That among all other things, I was like, okay, this I could see really pissing people off, but that's the choice they made. I felt like it was just sort of things to remind us that this actually happens. Those were our only like levers of reality. The threesome with the guys may have never happened, but this person dealing with this mental illness, is it schizophrenia? If she didn't have Norma and or Marilyn, she might have been a schizophrenic. She might have been in need of a hospital, is what I thought. I don't know if that's true to Marilyn's story, but in this particular journey, this person couldn't figure out who she was, who her past was, who her present was, the characters where she was creating, the surprise she was when she saw them, the fact that people liked them. Again, not necessarily true to Marilyn's story. I have no idea. I'm not a Marilyn historian. But what I saw, I just couldn't take my eyes away. This is way more about identity to me, which of course it is. But like, it's way more about identity than all of the other things that are getting discussed. And the stuff, as far as like what we should take away from Marilyn's story, because that's always it. It's like, what do they want me to know as the audience member? I don't know, but just seeing somebody go through this I couldn't stop. I was like totally sucked in. That was my experience with this movie.
Dude,
it's weird,
kind of
right?
jealous. I'm kind of jealous you just went there because honestly, I think this is one of the most brilliant films I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, it's one that certainly when we rewatch it, definitely in a couple years, I hope that more people, especially people who like Euphoria, which is about somebody who takes drugs, who doesn't know who she is, and all of her friends are all like, they're all putting on, if you've seen it, they're all putting on these identities, right? From her friend who goes on OnlyFans as a different character and finds empowerment. I'm not a female empowerment person. We've already talked about that. But like, I feel like that crowd, the crowd that likes Euphoria, might watch this. Maybe they see clips on TikTok and then they go, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then maybe they start not thinking good or bad or I like it or don't like it, but be like, that's fucked up. Oh, I can relate to that. Oh, that's like my friend. I wonder if this is going to age well. It might not, but I don't know. Sorry, John, to cut you off.
No, you're good. I think we should go ahead and say we're moving into spoilers because we all kind of, part of the lovely aspect of this movie is that you all kind of, everyone in America and anyone who kind of is familiar with the pop culture associated with her kind of knows the touchstones of who she is and her iconography and maybe some of the relationships she had, her marriages. So I feel like we're not really going to ruin anything because ultimately the telling of this film is the reason to watch this film. The vehicle is this mythology around a real life person named Marilyn Monroe, really Norma Jeane, aka Marilyn Monroe. So let's just push this to the side really quickly because I don't think you can discuss the actual film and the filmmaking without acknowledging that I completely understand and respect that some people are going to have a lot of issues and maybe won't be able to get past the fact that somebody is taking a lot of poetic, this is the most liberal way and positive way I can say it, poetic liberty, suggestive liberty with the events that happened in their life. I totally understand that. Elizabeth and I talked about maybe this would have been more effective if he didn't call her Marilyn Monroe, but it was Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah,
and maybe we could have gotten past those things. But let's just set that aside if we can, because it is important. I don't want to take anything away from that for people who struggle with that. But that was not ultimately what I think was intended. But more importantly, I don't think that's what found its way to the screen. I feel like this suggestive nature of the way the tale reveals itself, I very quickly realized just through the language of the movie that I wasn't supposed to think of this as a biopic. I was supposed to think of this as something that was trying to portray what it felt like for somebody to be in that crazy experience, what it may have felt like for that person to have such an effect on an audience member that I was never able to actually detach myself from what I was seeing and what I thought about the real person, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
And the way he commented on that with film language, changing aspect ratios to create more like photographic kind of settings, playing with color to try to give nods to the way that things may have been shot once, bringing color and totally out of it and overexposing backgrounds so that
Actually,
it felt so stylized, you felt like you were in a dream.
Every single aspect ratio and color matched the original photo.
Which is, and I feel like the commentary on
absolutely on purpose.
Yeah, all of the intentions, all of the choices to try to use every tool in the filmmaking box to try to suggest what it felt like to be under these circumstances, they were so effective and they worked so well for me that I just very quickly, maybe quicker than other people, was able to be compelled. Like you said, Jeff, that is exactly what I started thinking within like 20 minutes. I stopped judging whatever I thought I was bringing into the movie theater with what I thought about Marilyn Monroe. And I just gave myself over to the telling. And I have never seen anything like this before. The transitions, the camera movement. Dave, let's talk for a second. It doesn't have to be right now about coverage. Listeners, is whenever we shoot things from multiple angles so that we can always have an option to edit away from an angle if it's not working. There was literally no coverage in this movie. They did not have any of it. They didn't shoot anything from like an entire scene was not shot from multiple angles. There may have been a couple moments where they decided to shoot it differently, but the story was always moving forward with the change of angles. The transitions were so suggestive that, again, I feel like that was probably my favorite part about this whole movie. The edits and the very interesting choices like waterfalls and sheets.
I have a note that described the editing as schizophrenic.
So when we say that, like,
yeah, but that's a compliment. It was like,
it worked, right?
Yeah, it literally, was almost dizzying at points.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Let me pass this off after this, because I just listened. I tried to listen to some interviews. We all read some stuff because I'm sure we want to try to have a responsible conversation about this.
I did no research at all.
He said something that I thought was okay. Good. He said something that I thought was like, okay, this is exactly who he is, and you feel it when you watch his movies, and now we've actually heard it from the horse's mouth. He says that like he doesn't like he knows that most people discuss filmmaking in terms of storytelling dictates everything. And so you're going to kind of build all of your filmmaking around how to tell a story. But he tends to deal with this kind of suggestive, kind of poetic stuff. And he says that he's much more interested in thinking about how to film something as though it were music, film that comes at you. Every image, every move, every transition has a feeling, and it's specific. And it should kind of dictate how you see it, not necessarily trying to capture a moment. Having the moment create an emotional experience for you that hopefully isn't literal. And I felt like as soon as he said that, it made so much sense to me. Film is music. And because that's kind of what this felt like to me. I felt like I was listening to a very, yeah, sure.
There's a button I didn't think I'd push during this episode.
The gush alarm.
I'll shut the fuck up. We're gonna keep talking about all these things,
All right,
but
We're definitely turning. We
But,
haven't spoiled
yeah,
anything
yeah.
yet, but we're definitely turning the spoilers on now.
People tuning in for a blind episode are so confused right now.
Yeah.
They're like, what is happening with these guys?
Especially if they've seen the movie.
Well, I also want to throw an idea out there. So I'm replaying my rant, not the word for word because I don't give a fuck and I never do that. But the fact that I'm saying like, oh, this is somebody grappling with this, I'm sure somebody's going to be like, but Marilyn Monroe was smart. She actually did take advantage of her own well-being. She quit the industry and moved to New York and studied acting with Lee Strasberg. She started a company.
Yeah,
like,
there was a whole
she wasn't
a whole lot of that they left out. He was more focusing on the like he did deliberately want to focus on what broke her.
Yeah.
But
that was the question, right? Why did this person kill herself?
But
is
also,
basically what.
The thing that got me the most, because I joked before that I didn't do any research. I did. Every single event that he portrayed as breaking her, with the exception of maybe the Arthur Miller miscarriage, was rumor. There's no evidence that any of that ever happened.
Now, he said he did apparently. Well, yeah, I don't want to fight for him or anything, but supposedly him and Joyce Carol Oates did talk to people who knew her, and so they got she believes she got as John. Was this an article? She believes she got as much information as anybody possibly could have by talking to people who knew her, but I don't want to make it seem like he did his work, so therefore we should listen to him. That's not the point. All the miscarriages and the abortions and stuff, that is definitely still speculative to this day, as an example. And of course, the JFK interaction. All we really have is "Happy Birthday, Mr. President," and a lot of
which they skipped, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did.
Probably best after that scene that she did not say happy birthday.
Yeah, right.
But her on drugs, getting off the plane and getting the return ticket and going in there, like the way that happened.
That was. I mean, it was again everything from that point. Once she started to disintegrate, it settled into a narrative, whether it was based on fact or not. But it was the story he wanted to tell, and it was the story of the destruction of an icon.
And he entered the final lap about 45 minutes before the end of the movie too. It really was like, I don't want to say one beat. That's something that people have been saying about this movie that I don't agree with. But towards the end, it was devolving. There weren't a lot of ups and downs after a certain point. There were some spots that they really hit. But,
I agree.
But here's what I want to get at, because we still have a lot of people that are really standing for Marilyn Monroe as perhaps they should, because she was a real person and not just this figure, which is, obviously discussed in this movie. But so this is going to sound ridiculous, but with Shakespeare characters, we don't really give a fuck about who the real people are. We know who this Hamlet is. We know who that Macbeth is. We know who that Edward VI is. But we don't. The stories are all changed. Julius Caesar he probably never said et tu, Brute, but we actually think he did, because you know what I mean. But we're not going to hate on but we're not going to hate on Shakespeare for writing that. Literally, most people in this world think he actually said that, but really, one person who might not have even been the actual person we think he is wrote it in a play once. So anyway, with this character, I wonder what the Statue of Liberty. I wonder when people can, because this happens with movies all the time, where we take a figure and we make a movie about them, but say what we want to say. This is not the first time that is being done. How many times do they just pull on people? Abraham Lincoln was not a vampire hunter. We just like Abraham Lincoln, wanted to see him kill some vampires.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you turn on Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, you kind of know what you're fucking in for.
I know. I can't come up with another example. But all I'm saying is that if it was just vampire hunter, okay, but Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
I will come up with another example. Meet the Ricardos. I feel like they did it better granted theirs was based on a lot of fact, but it was dramatized. But also when she was playing Lucy, there were less impersonations. They shied away from actually reproducing like the movies or the TV shows or like that sort of thing. She was Lucy off stage, and once or twice they showed you her performing, and that was the impersonation. The rest of it was the Lucy you didn't see. And in this one, they kind of just went the other way, and it was just like clip after clip after clip after clip of like things that we already saw. And it was, they kind of windowed that with like her as Norma Jeane sitting there watching it or watching herself.
Well, so what I got out of it too, I validate that for sure. What I got out of it was Norma Jeane watching Marilyn and basically not realizing that Marilyn was very consistent while Norma Jeane was not. And so her basically being like, oh my God, is that what I did? Like almost not even remembering that. Now, for better or worse, is accurate or not, it still kind of worked for me to have those little check-in moments of her being like, wait, that was me 6 months ago when we filmed this? Like, and then of course the on-set rockiness got a little crazy. But
also, I must admit, when they were showing diamonds on screen and then they cut to her and the camera slowly pulls out and she's like surrounded by the demons from Smile. Yeah. Is there anywhere their fucking marketing didn't reach?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I think I totally agree that like he could not have avoided that because that was such an obvious. Not many people have that kind of mirror looking back at them for that public image. We all kind of create that public image of ourselves and celebrities, and she's just one of the highest of all time in terms of that kind of iconography. It was essential for us to see her witnessing that. So I don't know how they could have inferred or implied that. So it did work for me that we got to see the horror of taking on that kind of, whatever you want to call it, alter ego or just show name. You know, it became more, it almost in a way it started with this thing that seemed so innocent and logical, and then by the end of it, it seemed to have just completely taken over all of her, whatever her foundation was for any kind of sanity. She lost it more and more and more as she went along when she realized, I feel like it kind of built to this point where, for me, there was a big turning point in one of the Joe DiMaggio scenes where he comes home after 7 Year Itch and just beats the hell out of her. Or no, excuse me, before 7 Year Itch, when he says, you can't take this movie, after the Chaplin and Edward G. Robinson Jr. give him the photos. And he says, you know, you can't do it. And she says, I have to work. It's literally all I have. It really made that. I feel like that was so specific and so necessary for me to think that she was building up an entire sense of worth around something that started closer to who I think she thought she could control it. This side of her that people enjoyed seeing. And then it ate her. And I just don't think it would have worked filmmaking wise if I didn't get to see myself eating her. Like I started destroying her, just as we all have with the way we think of Marilyn Monroe. Like she kind of belongs to us now. It's almost like this.
There were a couple of straight down the barrel shots as well, like to really hit that. I mean, that
helped, but I just couldn't stop thinking the whole time about how incredibly intelligent it was for him to use all these fun filmmaking techniques to try to suggest to us that any judgment you have for this woman, whether you're trying to rescue her from this film, from me, is ultimately you projecting what you think you know of her.
Or even if
because she lent herself to all of us.
If you think, well, Marilyn Monroe is this, and it's like, well,
I can see why it pissed off a lot of the diehard fans, because he's basically calling out the fandom, going, "You did this."
We all did it.
Yeah,
dude. I mean,
but it's like it's like you fed off her and drove her to this. So like it's almost the whole film is almost an accusation, which is probably why it sits wrong with a lot of people, because like there are two things you don't mess with in this country: Marilyn and I found out Elvis. So
yeah.
I mean, it's weird that they both came out this year.
I didn't personally see that this film was an accusation, although there were accusatory properties in this. But I don't think that was. I think if there is there are centripetal circles of depth, I don't think that's in the middle is saying that we did this. I mean, I really think this was just inside of her, and he was trying to figure out why she died. And the reason she died is because she never had an identity. She didn't know who she was. And so she had nothing to latch on to. So when she was seeing herself and she realized she wasn't seeing a person that she really even recognized or understood to be herself, that she was just lost in the kerfuffle and then just became this fantasy nightmare, like the drugs and the no sleeping. And she didn't have any reality to clench onto and went over the deep end. That was my take. Obviously, everybody's going to have a different take, but I don't see everybody else getting blamed for it in the same way. If anything, I see the people around her getting blamed for it, like these two guys, which I don't know if they're real or not. But why I don't know their intention. I don't know why they're sending the pictures unless they say like, please save her. But it didn't seem very kind. It didn't seem like they were in jest.
They were real. She didn't have a relationship with them, as far as reality is concerned.
As far as reality, but then again, what is reality?
They worked together on a set once. is from what I could glean, that whole thing was possibly someone else covered up. I don't know, but it definitely wasn't like there's no evidence that relationship ever occurred, which kind of leads me into like they were the ones that had the photos that sent him to DiMaggio, which led to him beating her. So if that whole thing was fabricated, then that fabricated element fed into the thing that was supposed to be an actual thing that happened. And so it's like half it's fabricated, half it's not, if you look into the facts of the thing. And it was just like some of it's fact, some of it's not. So you're presenting half this movie as fact and half this movie as a fantasy. And it just like,
but you know what? Don't we do that exact thing when we hear celebrity gossip and stuff? Like we almost are like filling in those gaps for ourselves, and we feel so comfortable making assumptions about what these humans must have gone through and what could have happened behind closed doors. And it's almost like the stuff between the things that we actually think we know.
The media makes millions off that.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, even if that was just an effective technique for him to use, like for this particular kind of story, I thought it transcended the whatever might be bumping for you in terms of did this happen. But you have to be willing to do that for sure. Let's try to, if it's cool, I think we should try to talk about like specific areas of the film, because you can have like a big picture conversation about this all day.
Yeah.
So you guys said the opening really, really worked for you when she was a child, before we kind of move into anything of her beginning to enter the industry as an older person. Not totally Marilyn yet, but so the first part worked for you guys. I was a little thrown, to be honest, by the dialogue. Like it just sounded very unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a moment for me to realize like, oh, okay, this is not a biopic. Like there is something really strange happening here. And I started thinking like, this is how she remembers it. Like, this is some weird fucked up version of like, nobody actually behaves and talks like that. Some of the horrific stuff with her mother, I think, did feel almost authentic, because memories and the authenticity when you're actually going through those moments are so I don't know what the right word would be, but like it's hard to actually experience things that are that traumatic when they're coming at you in real time. Like we kind of rely on memory to censor some of it. So that stuff really worked for me. But I was so compelled by that sequence you're talking about with Charlie Chaplin Jr. and Edward G. Robinson Jr.
Where is she? Like, at who? Oh, it's Norma. There's Norma. No, there's Marilyn. Like that weird.
Their
like
whole
it worked
20,
for me,
30 minutes together. I was just like, what is this? And that was kind of the first time that I really allowed myself to stop trying to have any kind of accountability for what was actually real and what wasn't. And I gave myself over to it. And I as soon as the bed sheets turning into the waterfall, like from there on out, I was just in his arms. Like anything that would have happened, I probably would have bawled.
And the music, oh my God, the music that they put on during that scene. Yeah.
The score in general was really incredible. It kind of went after that. It kind of started going in and out in terms of like being more suggestive and being. It almost felt like he was tapping more and more into. As the movie went on, it started to feel more and more like this is maybe how somebody in that place would look back on these events of their life, because the way he started to kind of crunch all of those major touchstones, even though it's a very long fucking movie, we all kind of started expecting, oh, we're going to see this and we're going to see this and we're going to see this. And the way he manipulated them, and they became so malleable. I don't know, like every bit of it was introduced in such an evocative way that I thought I knew what to expect when he would get to the next relationship or movie or whatever. And every single time it was surprising to me.
Well,
I can't.
It reminded me of, this is another reason it reminded me of acting class, not to keep harping on this, but we still do this, but especially, this is the method, people. This is the heart of the method. And she eventually studied with Lee Strasberg. So maybe he took some liberties with that, which is really bordering on therapy, where you substitute the circumstances of the show, and you put your own circumstances into your character. So essentially every time, whether it's an audition or not, Marilyn is calling upon these traumatic parts of herself as to flesh out the script. You get the script. Yes, who are you? I don't know who you are. Oh, I thought you were that person, but I'm so alone. And rather than just say those lines with feeling, you remember a time in your life that purposely matches these circumstances, and you bring all of that, yes, in this case, trauma to it. Now, I'm not saying that like this is just an acting exercise, this whole movie, but in a way that's like what her whole life was, and she just didn't know if she was doing it intentionally or not. There's the one scene to talk about this, and I think did I text you guys this? Maybe not. But there's the audition scene where the reader is getting uncomfortable. And she's clearly going in for blonde bimbo roles, for dumb blonde roles. They're obviously talking about that. And there's this one script, which is the line is like that. She doesn't know who the guy is. The guy's like, but you're saying that, I'm that. I'm not Philip, I'm Jed. And she goes, oh, you're not him. You never were. And honestly, you could read it as a comedy. You could read, like, I swear I was listening to the dialogue and it could have easily been like, oh my God, I'm a dumb blonde and I forgot who you are. I thought you were never him, were you? Ha 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 ha, I'm just a dumb blonde. But she did it and it was fucking torture. And the reader's getting uncomfortable and everybody in the room's, it's almost like she just could not shake this trauma out of her because she gets a lot of knock on her performance ability, her acting ability, but she's always in it. Whatever she's doing, she's never hamming it up. We think she is because she's brilliant at it, but she's, in the little I know about her, it's very relaxed and it's very full and very lived in. It's just sometimes seems out of place. You know what I mean? So I wonder if her whole life is like these traumatic acting classes come to life. Anyway, that's just an idea that I haven't fleshed out yet.
I think it definitely was.
I have definitely known like actors and actresses who thought their life was a series of scenes.
Which is something that's really relevant to nowadays. So this is the vehicle for
They're
that.
not well, but that's how they saw it.
Yeah, you're the star in your own movie. You're the star of your own. How many people podcast to themselves in real life, like as if they're telling the world what their day is? You know?
Yeah, joke's on you guys. I haven't released any of these.
Dave's
the only one getting buzzes. What the fuck?
There's a very difficult scene with John F. Kennedy, where she literally discusses that in an inner monologue while she's performing a sexual act that is very hard to watch.
Very hard.
And
it's literally right in your face. Yeah.
The fact that he plays that, because when it started happening, like it was one of the many times when I was watching this where I was like, oh God, don't make us watch this.
Yeah.
And two things happened. One, he gave that voiceover where Marilyn begins to say, play the scene, don't throw up. If this were a movie, you could blah, blah, blah. And she starts literally dissecting, like, how do I pretend to be a part of this experience? Which is kind of like the whole essence of the entire thing for me. It was like, it was building to like, she is in a traumatic experience, discussing how to pretend to be okay with a traumatic experience. So that touched me. And then at the same time,
that scene, I agree. I think that was a fucking brilliant scene. The whole way it was played from top to tail.
Andrew Dominik pulls out and shows a movie audience watching a screen of the scene being played on the screen.
Yeah.
Just so we can all remember,
so
you are the sick fuck that is choosing to watch this.
She's disassociating herself as well.
She's doing it. We were doing it. It was like, God damn, it was all happening at once. And I think this is a good time for us to just point out that there is, let me try to find this article where Ana de Armas basically came out and said that she, where is that article? Where she basically said, because there are so many scenes that where she is either nude or in the middle of sexual activity. And I thought it was really great that Ana de Armas has come out and said, it's harder for people to watch than for me to make it, because I understood what I was doing and I felt very protected and safe. I didn't feel exploited because I was in control. I made that decision. I knew what the movie was, what the movie was doing, and I trusted my director. I felt like I was in a safe environment. We had hundreds of conversations about these scenes. Everyone felt a deep respect for the movie we were making. And in that sense, I had no fear. I didn't feel uncomfortable at all, even though they were really hard scenes. And I felt like one of my biggest takeaways from this, which I'm trying, when people are asking you, oh, did you see it? What'd you think? Should I see it? I'm trying to tell people for sure that, like, you can have whatever opinion you want. You're a human. But I hope no one undercuts the amazing amount of trust that was required from her risk to take on this role and to do it so much, and for both of them, director and actor, to trust each other to try to do something that is this evocative. I tip my hat. Like, I just cannot. I haven't seen anyone take risks like that.
There was no half-assing this role. She went all fucking in.
All fucking in. I just can't imagine anyone taking the Oscar over this. I mean, not to jump all the way to that, but
she won't get nominated because people are
unbelievable-
afraid. People are scared. They don't like it. They'll probably avoid it. I shouldn't say they were scared, but because of the reviews, I can see this.
I
But,
don't know.
I don't know.
Jeff, talk about the Joyce Carol Oates
Wait,
up
Dave.
at the top, real fast. Joyce Carol Oates came out. Who's the author of the book? So we can kind of just put this out there. She said, I think it was a brilliant work of cinematic art, obviously not for everyone. And she said, it's surprising that in a post-Me Too era, the stark exposure of sexual predation in Hollywood has been interpreted as exploitation. Surely Andrew Dominik meant to tell Norma Jeane's story sincerely. So again, it almost elevated this film that we're in, this context. And he's not an idiot. I'm sure he kind of knew what murky waters he was working in when he started handling the subject matter. But everybody's projection of how they feel of that word exploitation onto this director's intention, or what they might say is a false intention or negative or manipulated intention, to try to use that as a way to get us into a movie theater. I feel like that is just the shallow end of criticism. Honestly, I feel like that is just completely bypassing the amount of respect that all of these people must have had to take this many risks. Everybody that was on screen seemed to be really going for it.
I'm not like the exploitation of it. That didn't even touch me. I was like, it's a performance, and I get that. It bounced around so much. It just kind of lost me.
Totally.
That was my problem with it. Like, it was like it kind of sets itself up one way and then turns that on its head. And it wasn't until about, I think, maybe 45 minutes to an hour in, I settled down and started like watching it for what it was. But that first hour was just completely disorienting.
Sure. No, I totally get it.
The last 30 minutes.
That's going to turn a lot of people off.
For me.
Yeah,
the last 30 minutes for me kind of stopped. Like, it started to not be quite as that captivating, compelling thing that really got me. I started to lose a little bit of it. Although I will say that, like,
because it got real ugly.
It did get real ugly, but also like the filmmaking. If he was playing with this theme of that, like, you're watching this and we created this all together as society, and the film was such a huge part of it just because all of our interpretations of her are through a lens, almost all of them, that it finally built to this place where I was like, God, he's doing it so much and in so many obvious ways that I kind of feel like I'm trapped inside a movie with her. And that did start to excite me all the way to the last moment where, if you didn't know that he was trying to make a commentary on this is a movie and this is not supposed to be taken literal, the final scene of this movie is a cameraman literally setting down a camera on a floor. It shakes. It moves.
Yeah, that
doesn't feel refined. He moves it a little bit, literally attaches something to it so that he can do a natural in-camera fade out to black. Like,
yeah.
The final statement was so effective for me that it did redeem a little bit of the last 30 minutes or so.
Did it seem like a snuff film or something?
I referred to that as Focus Puller's Day Off.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Dave's got to make sure we get our buzzes in this episode.
No, at one point, I did, for a second there, I was like, are they shooting with the lens off the camera? Because the blur just looked so fucking blurred that I was like, if they just taken the fucking lens off the camera. But yeah, that last fade out when he did it and like the iris started to shift, and I was like, they're doing that in camera. They're doing the film fade out in fucking camera. I appreciated that for what it was.
Dude, how many of these things do you think were optical effects, like in camera? The transition into the threesome with the bleeding images, the bendy, slowly revealing their bodies. Like, how the fuck did they do that? All of the, like, what I can only call like blown out silhouettes, like when they would just use like everything around her was so overexposed that it seemed like she was like whatever the opposite of a silhouette was. Like, somehow we saw her face centered in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And it made sense. There's just so many things like that where I.
What about? Did you guys see this where Arthur Miller's face was when she was on drugs? Like, his face was just blurry, but it almost seems
that's a
fake. It almost seemed.
No, there's a type of I'm not sure if it's aphasia exactly, but it's a type of thing where you can't recognize faces.
Right.
It's a mental illness.
But the way they did it, it almost like someone put a thumbprint on the the negatives or something. They literally like it seems
I'm
it doesn't
pretty sure
seem
that one was a
digitally
digital-
clean.
That was a digital effect. I'm pretty sure.
I'm
did look digital.
sure it was. That it looked.
Elizabeth,
it was just
Elizabeth
like,
made a good
wow.
point that it is known that Marilyn Monroe had very bad eyesight. She couldn't see.
Oh, interesting.
She saw things blurrily in a blur, and she didn't wear the glasses because at some point somebody told her, you're not as pretty with that. So I thought that, I don't even know if Andrew Dominik knew that, but that kind of gave it a whole different element when she told me that after the fact. I was like, oh my God, the way they chose to deal with whether or not she was perceiving, and somehow in the center of it, she was always seeing herself in the middle of these situations.
Yeah.
That motif.
That was the other thing, like when they were
clear over and over and over.
When they were doing the circular blur of everything that wasn't her, and you'd see someone had sat there and lovingly rotoed her out so that like that blur only applied to stuff behind the fence or like not her but everything else, and like because even if she went into the section that was blurred, she didn't blur, so she was there no matter what the scenery was doing. It was.
How did the babies work for you guys? All the in the womb images and motifs.
It was Dave.
Yeah. It didn't. The first one I was like, all right. And then like I didn't feel like it was necessary at all. At first I thought they were going to literally show like the abortion. I was like, oh no, they're not. Like because that would have been the line. That was too far. Like if,
oh my
if
God, the one scene though where it like oh my God, the one scene where you see like the
no, that was weird for me as well. I didn't really enjoy that.
I think it didn't for me. The first one or two, I mean, again, if she's going, I know there's a lot of people are talking about the daddy issues. Like, this is just daddy issues. It's a guy saying a girl, she has daddy issues. I still go back to acting class thing where it's like therapy. When were you touched as a child? And it's like, she didn't know who her dad was. Her mom's crazy. She didn't have any siblings. Like, she just wasn't rooted in this reality. And that was one thing that could have helped root her. I'm not justifying daddy issues or this telling of it. But as far as the babies are concerned, it was just sort of the other end of that, which is why she, I think, kept going for her mom, at least in this telling, which is like the bravery and courage of bringing a child into this world. It's like it justifies our existence, maybe as a take on why that was happening. And the fact that it came so close and it was living inside her and it was a part of this psyche, like we're living inside of her, of Marilyn. So therefore we have to see it somehow to justify this, so to speak. But by the last one, it was a little bit torturous. But then again, he didn't want us to be that last when she wakes up with the blood and everything. It was just like, oh my God, I'm ready for this to be over.
That was a fantastic shot.
It was great. I mean, it was the horse. It was the horse in the bed.
Like I had the worst dream, and then she pulls the fucking sheet aside. That was meant to be shocking. It was shocking.
Yeah.
They did that really well. But,
so maybe it did work, but it's a tough pill to swallow for sure. It's like I just passed.
By that point, we're so far down the path of destruction. It's like everything from this point on is going to be a fucking tough pill to swallow.
Well, and it's like it's almost like they had to go that far because otherwise it was like we got to kill her already because we've already gone so far. And so that was the last one for me, which I think it kind of was for the movie because even the note that was like your dad wasn't real. That was just kind of like, okay, good, we're at the end now. But that baby, the last third baby was. Is it the third one? There was miscarriage, abortion.
Yeah. She actually had 3 miscarriages. In reality,
that was a miscarriage.
And no
abortions. An abortion. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's.
Did it work for you, John?
Rumored that. Yeah. I wanted to bring it up because in the cinema, in the movie theater, when the baby started talking to her, some people laughed in my cinema. It worked so badly for some people that they started scoffing at the screen.
Yeah.
And by the time the third in the womb shot arrived, the second abortion, third loss, some people started scoffing at it then and like making like arm gestures, like give me a fucking break. And some people I could tell were like very moved by it and very affected by it.
Did they want us to think that the studio would have like maybe that is accusatory, like she had the miscarriage, but it's because the studio was giving her drugs and they were making her live this lifestyle. Like
I was about to say that's perfect transition because the first abortion,
or miscarriage, it's very confusing.
Well, the first one is actual abortion, right? She's saying, "I don't want to do this. I changed my mind. And they put her into twilight sleep. the way it goes into with like 40 different filming techniques are happening inside this sequence, but it transitions into her like running away, running into the fire in her house when she's a child.
Yeah,
I know.
Trying
It
to save
reminded me of Batman
version of her
Arkham
in the
Knight when
drawer.
Riddler gets like when Scarecrow gets you with his fucking venom shit. It was
Yeah, it is like that
Yeah,
shit. But then
and it
right
puts
after
you in a
that,
living
I'm pretty
nightmare.
sure I didn't look at this. I didn't take a second glance at this, but I think I'm right. It came out of that, and she was sitting in front of her mirror, like in makeup.
yeah.
So like it was like the studio, like what you were just saying. Like I don't think it's not about if it literally happened or not. The idea of the pressure she felt to do that, to get back to conjuring Marilyn Monroe, it was so effective. Like that sequence, that whole sequence made me, because I did feel like, are we going to see this fucking abortion? Like I think he towed the line so well of making you feel like, are we really going to have to watch this? Is she going to put herself through this? And what is the point of seeing all this? He went into the sense, it was right before she does the sense memory work in the acting class when she transitions out of LA to New York. I thought that was really beautiful metaphorical language to show that ahead of time. And just by the end of it, just having her stuck, it was the first time I think we saw her like after trauma already as Marilyn, which is something that we're going to keep coming back to, like this idea of seeing herself in a mirror and trying to turn herself into this
Marilyn
new
is
version
where
of herself.
Marilyn is where she turns when she can't handle what's happening to her.
I guess that's what.
Yeah, we all have one of those.
That's kind of what thematically, whether or not these abortions happened, I feel like the statement that, again, not literally, the statement that she was constantly, possibly grappling, this version of her in the movie, grappling with the trauma of her past, that the conflict of whether or not she could actually save the version of herself who was so traumatized as a child by having a child was just, it was stretched out so well. And it was so disgusting to have to see her deal with that it was amazing to me that it was so reusable. The fact that it kept coming back to that, whether or not that actually happened in her life.
I found that weird, because
she couldn't save herself.
That first abortion was because she went and saw her mother, and they said that like your mother has this like mental disease,
Right.
and she's like, well, is it in the blood? Was I born like? Can it be passed on to kids? And he insinuate that yes, it probably can, and that's when she has that first abortion. But then she goes on and gets married.
Because she says, "You killed your
and
baby for this." When she sees Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Yeah, but then she goes on to proceed to have kids or try to have kids after that.
Right,
So
which
it's
is
like a complete change of.
Well,
the question of whether or not she actually wanted them. I feel like that was a more important question, and it was just such I feel like it was such a device for her to see herself through that it was easy for me to stop thinking about, did this actually happen? Because I thought it was so effective for her to be trying to figure out if she can actually save herself from what happened to her by trying to do it all again. Can I mother myself into a new life? And the answer was ultimately no.
Also, for the timeline, the timeline actually checks out for this, because that was Gentlemen Prefer Blondes right before it. Because remember, she gets the studio thing and she's like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. How much is that person getting? And that's that whole conversation. That's 1953. The Joe DiMaggio thing with the 7-year itch, and when she moves to New York, bless you, is 1955. And then she starts this own company basically for herself around 55, 56. So I'm not a historian, but this is actually the one period I know where in 1952-3, she's still willing to, and we didn't talk about the sexual assault, which maybe we just shouldn't. And I don't think he helped himself, because he mentioned like people are talking about the Me Too stuff, and but I guess they don't want to see it, even though they're willing to talk about it. I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to. I shouldn't be saying things that I'm not 100% on, but he did mention like people are talking about the Me Too stuff, and so it's okay to show it because people are talking. Bless you. So anyway, we don't have to talk about the assault thing, but up until bless you, Jesus, dude,
John did a whole bunch of coke before the show.
So anyway, 53, 54, 55, when she's doing Gentlemen Prefer Blondes in the 7-year itch, she's still at that point in her career where she has to say yes to everything because she's not set. And then she takes ownership at 55. She marries Arthur Miller in 56. And then theoretically, like after 56, she should be in a better place. And then she wasn't. So I don't, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've
We've covered it.
We've covered it. Yeah. It's, I mean, I'm not going to recommend people don't see it. I just didn't enjoy it on the watch I had.
Sure.
Let me correct myself. I didn't enjoy all of it. There were certain elements of it that I loved. And a lot of them we've talked about, like from this.
Jeez, sorry.
So like, it's definitely worth seeing just to see what you come away with.
Yeah. It's the number one trending movie on IMDb of what people are searching and Googling. So,
even with that rating, which is, weird. It's
even
crazy,
with, probably especially
good.
with,
I mean, people are curious.
Yeah.
So there's some controversy around it. It's,
Go watch it.
yeah, go watch it and
go watch it. I love when we say go watch it after we just.
you guys loved it. What are you talking about? I was the one that had a problem with it. I had a problem with it on several levels, but I'm still saying, like, should it be seen? If you like film, yes.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of Marilyn, like an avid fan of Marilyn, maybe
It's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
You're not going to enjoy this, but maybe still watch it.
Yeah. All right, people. So let's get into our final segment of what you've been watching, where we go around, give you our recommendations of the week, and tell you what we've been watching. We always start with Dave. Dave.
Oh, what have I been watching? Well, I've still been going with Rings of Power, which finally had its oh fuck moment this week.
This is the 1 week where I haven't seen these two episodes.
The whole internet blew up about it. It's an oh fuck moment. You have to wait to right near the end for it, but give that a watch. That's about all. I mean, I'm still going with Andor. I'm still going with She-Hulk. That's about it. I've been in theater, dude.
Yeah, you're in the theater.
I've been on a show for the first time in 5 years. So yeah, I've been busy. And I've also watched the new Black Panther trailer about 6 times today.
The No Woman No Cry trailer.
No, the new one where they reveal.
Oh, there's a new one.
A fucking toy company blew the secret. So again, I feel it's only a matter of time before Kevin Feige puts out hits on about 5 Hasbro executives. But
Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah, and so they released a trailer where they pretty much reveal, and then they released the posters where it's like blatantly obvious who the fucking new Black Panther is. So
all right, well,
yeah,
God damn it.
But it also, yay, all about it. Love it. Can't wait.
Yeah. I'm sure whatever it is great.
It's gonna be the first Marvel movie I enjoyed this year.
Yeah, I think we're all banking on that. I'm caught up on Rings of Power as well. Finished catching up last night. And
how many episodes is it? 3? Where
6.
are you at?
6 now, right?
John's was like, I'm caught up. I bet exits.
Watched 2.5 more. Anyway, I have now, I think, had a couple moments. I'm still, you still have to kind of realize it's a series. It's not Tolkien. It's something else. They're based on that. But there were a few moments over the past 2 episodes or so where I felt like I was watching Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
like
right.
It is beginning to touch in that place where you are finally deep enough and you know all these characters and you can kind of just live in Middle Earth under these circumstances. And because of the reveal Dave is talking about, it does bring it back really well to something that, might be a little fan fiction-y, but it's going to be fucking awesome to watch.
Show us on the doll where Lord of the Rings touched you.
So that's me. How about you, Jim?
I'm trying to get Dave drunk here. He's got a busy week. So I think I only watched Andor and then one other show, which is The Patient. I finally saw The Patient on Hulu.
Oh, I want to see that. I really want to see that.
Yeah, it's 28 to 30-minute episodes of drama, which is already like an interesting form. 10 episodes.
Weird.
Steve Carell, Domhnall Gleeson, he's a therapist. Domhnall Gleeson's a serial killer, kidnaps the therapist, and basically is like, you're gonna help me not want to kill anymore while you're chained up in my basement. Now, of course, if you're doing the math there, you're saying, okay, that's 5 hours of Steve Carell chained in his basement. And so it has a little of this could have been a really good play. That's 2 hour syndrome going on. They do make some decisions that help that format, because as a writer, you always want to write yourself into problems that you can write yourself out of. And that's a tricky problem to write yourself out of, that your therapist is chained to a bed. And also, we never see Domhnall Gleeson's point of view. It's all from Steve Carell. So some flashback stuff, but I think on the whole, it's good. But there were definitely a couple times where I was like, I wasn't itching to binge it. Let's put it that way. But it's not over yet. I think 6 episodes have come out, and I think I've seen 5 of them. But I'll give it the recommendation, and I'm going to keep going through. And I hope that by the time I get to the end, I hope I'm glowing a little bit more than I am right now. That's it.
Nice.
All right.
Amsterdam is in theaters, friends. Other movies to go see. It's getting
all
into
the
that
one-word
season. Go see
titles. We
some
love
movies.
it.
It's getting thick out there.
Andor, Blonde, sure. Smile. All the one-word titles. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Did you see the clips of the Major League Baseball? Where they sent people out to just stand in the background of the shots and smile?
Yeah.
The fucking demon?
I'm hoping they only stood there for a second because it's creepy. Oh, and I've been watching sports because
they were there for ages, apparently. Like the first time they did it, they didn't even have him in the smile t-shirt, and it got really fucking creepy. So
weird.
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. Well, on that note, we'll see you next time, Phil fans. Thanks for sticking around.